Thank you, Secretary Yellen, for your testimony right here. Thank you for your testimony. Let me follow up with Ranking Member McHenry's line of questioning about the energy loophole in the sanctions on Russian banks. And I've talked to Deputy Secretary Adeyemo about this, and he's a very impressive guy, and he's open-minded to my line of inquiry. I hope you are as well. I have a bill called the No Energy Revenues for Russian Hostilities Act that would close that loophole or give the administration the option to create an escrow arrangement that requires all Russian energy revenues to be allocated for humanitarian purposes, which is similar to arrangements currently in place with Iran. So to the extent that you have concerns, or the administration has diplomatic concerns or sensitivities with respect to our European allies' overdependence on Russian gas, this legislation or this approach would enable you to retain the ability to waive or license specific transactions to help our European allies get those supplies of gas, but then escrow the proceeds of those transactions and have a carrot approach, not just a stick, but a carrot approach, build up those revenues and say to Putin, withdraw, you get your gas revenues, but only if you withdraw from Ukraine and only if you use these proceeds for humanitarian purposes. Would you be open to that approach?
I think something along those lines is a constructive suggestion, and I think it's an approach that is worth exploring. We have a way for Russia to sell oil and gain the proceeds in the form of a general license, but the license is temporary. It will expire. We need probably a better mechanism. I think it's a constructive suggestion.
Well, thank you, and
we could work with you.
Thank you. And your deputy, Mr. Adeyemo, was open to that as well. I'd appreciate you all looking at that. Again, it's a bill that I have, No Energy Revenues for Russian Hostilities Act. I think this is the loophole that we need to close. This is what Zelensky is asking for. When he says we need to be tougher on sanctions, this is what he's talking. This is what is financing Putin's war. It is the foreign currency that is being used through these energy transactions. This is what we need to cut off to the extent we can.
I would just emphasize that we need the flexibility to work with our partners on this. This coalition has been critical to our success.
I agree, Secretary.
Not to be unilateral in our approach.
I agree, and I know, and I agree with that. But this bill and this approach would give us that flexibility. It would enable you to provide some of those transactions, allow some of those transactions to go through for our European partners, but build those proceeds up in an escrow account and give an incentive for Putin to withdraw. Let me ask you another question, switching gears here. As someone who served both as chair of the Federal Reserve and now in your capacity as Treasury Secretary, the chair of FSOC, you have a unique view into the regulatory landscape for the financial services industry. And one of the things that I've always wanted to learn more about is how our regulators develop frameworks with international standard-setting bodies. Decisions made at Basel and the FSB are highly impactful to the U.S. economy, and I don't feel like Congress really has any insight or visibility into what the United States advocates for in these negotiations. What types of materials and briefings were you given as Fed chair and now as FSOC chair with respect to what we commit to in these groups? What types of materials can we get for this committee to ensure that the advocacy is in line with the policy goals of the Congress?
Well, we can try to provide you with materials and briefings. The FSB and the BIS publish their work papers on their websites. There's no regulatory enforcement through those agencies there. These are fora in which we discuss with partners around the world what would be desirable regulations, but it doesn't in any way inhibit what we can do or compel us to do anything in the United